Okay, thank you for joining us. Session today is keeping human in the mix. And before I let our guests introduce themselves and I introduce myself, I just want to call your attention to the Slidos there at the table or online. Two things. We'll be taking virtual questions. So we want to keep this interactive. So please go to the Q&A and then put any questions you may have. Or we're also going to be doing a couple of polls, just to kind of get reaction to some of the topics that we're talking about today. So again, my name is Bryan Padgette, Senior Vice President at Sureify. I am responsible for our revenue operations. We are a InsurTech, InsurTech getting ready to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. We focus on the life and annuity industry, helping them digitally acquire their customers, engage with those customers, and service those customers, both the agent and the policyholder. But I have, more importantly, two great guests. I'll let them introduce themselves. Rick?
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Delisi. I'm the lead research analyst at Glia, and Glia is the leading provider of digital customer service solutions to financial institutions, insurance companies, banks, and credit unions. I'm the co-author of two books. One called The Effortless Experience describes the relationship between customer effort and long-term customer loyalty. And our newest book is called Digital Customer Service, tracing the evolution of customer expectations and behaviors into today's digital world. And so ultimately what I've been studying is customer behavior. What's going on inside a person's mind and even in their heart as they're having an interaction with a company, and how does that lead to loyalty or disloyalty?
Wonderful. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of watching you speak before, Rick, and I'm really looking forward to your answers on a couple of these and the questions we'll get. Lindsey?
Sure. Lindsey Cox. I lead technology delivery for Brighthouse Financial, selling life insurance and annuities to those in need. I have had a history in the insurance industry. My entire career is spent between MetLife and Brighthouse, and as many of you know, Brighthouse is a divestiture of MetLife. My entire career has been in the technology space, and have had the opportunity over the last several years to see technology advance significantly, especially as we developed our new technology ecosystem at Brighthouse.
Great. Thanks, Lindsey. Yeah, so kind of two perspectives today inside the house and helping carriers and all other companies. So starting off, keeping human in the mix. I mean, it could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, so really want to get your take first. So, Lindsey, what does that mean to you?
Sure. I'm going to start with my vantage point. So obviously my vantage point is in-house, in the carrier. And I think it's important to understand who's your persona when you talk about human. For me, that persona could be the financial professional who we are working with, who is selling our business to a client. It could be the human who is the customer themselves, who is purchasing an insurance product from Brighthouse, or who is looking for us to make a promise to them for their future. And it can also be our employees that work at Brighthouse. And for any of you, this applies to yourselves as well. So when I think about keeping human in the mix, it's making sure that human is in the center of all of those interactions. Every person has different needs, expectations, their behaviors, and I think most importantly, their experiences that they bring with them when they're interacting with us as customers, when they're interacting with us as employees, or as advisors who are selling our products. So when I think about keeping human in the mix, it's about bringing the human person to everything that we do and not forgetting that they have feelings and desires and experiences and expectations that they're setting for you.
Rick?
You know, we live in a digital world now, and that almost always is translated as we don't need to have human contact anymore. We don't talk to people on the telephone the way we used to. So many of our interactions are on our own screens. We live in an on-screen world. I mean, even the title of our book is Digital Customer Service, but what we've been learning is there are always going to be some situations, not all, but some, in which live human contact is absolutely critical. In some of the research we've done, we've discovered that when a person is in a moment of truth, now again, that'd be self-defined by each individual, but certainly in the insurance space, there's lots of moments of truth. Situations where there's some emotional element, situations where you're fearful you might pick the wrong response or do the wrong thing, or if you did the wrong thing, there could be longer term ramifications. When a person's having a moment of truth, they're 7 times more likely to want to have an interaction with a live human being, even if they started the interaction online. And so what we describe in the book is a methodology which we call DCS, or Digital Customer Service, that enables a customer to have a live contact with a human being, but on their screen whenever the customer wants it. Think about how different that is than the way service is typically handled right now. Almost all of us go online first to start an interaction. You go somewhere down the pathway or the process to get whatever it is you need, or find the information, or resolve the issue that you're dealing with, and at some point you realize, I got to talk to somebody. So what are you left with? Abandoning your whole digital journey, and then finding a phone number and going through that whole process, which generally we all hate doing. But if you could simply press a button on your own screen when you wanted to, and then have live human contact with another person, that completely changes the experience. So ultimately, keeping human in the mix is allowing the customer to decide when they want to have a human experience, and making that available to them in the midst of a broader digital experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can't agree more with both of you. I mean, Lindsey and I were talking a little bit before, and I was telling a story about when we first got started. I first got started with Sureify about 6 years ago. We were using the word disruptor. We were going to come in and everything's going to be digital. We're going to replace agents, and kind of naively making these statements and quickly learning what you talk about, that meeting the customer where they are, when and how they want to be met, and that's complicated because that's so different. I mean, as an industry, we work with ultra high net worth people to weekly debit business, all different types of products and channels, and so how can you meet them where they are, both digitally and keeping human in the mix? Exactly. Did you want to add?
We describe the concept of meet your customer where they are 3 different ways. So the most obvious one is the one you're describing. Meet the customer in the channel that they chose to contact you. That's almost table stakes now. But the second way you need to meet your customers where they are is in the midst of the journey or the process that they themselves started online. So when you have to interrupt a digital interaction to then make a phone call, the person you talk to always says, "Hi, I'm Rick, how can I help you?" As if that's the beginning of the interaction. And it might be to that call center agent, but it's not to you. It's very much the middle of some interaction you started some number of minutes ago. So companies need to meet their customers where they are in the midst of their journey. And then the third way, maybe at a more meta level, if you will, is meet customers where they are in their own digital transformation. All of us have transformed as people. Our behaviors and expectations are wildly different than they were even 5 or 10 years ago. So companies have to accept that people are different and need to meet them where they are in their own transformation to becoming digital first humans.
Yeah, no. So I want to put up the first poll, because I think the word customer can mean a lot of different things for different people. So curious to see what the audience, how you define customer. But it also, kind of your comment leads me to the next area of, human behavior and customer expectations are changing, right? And where we are in our digital transformation, as you said, varies differently. I mean, a lot of people talk about the millennial from a digital experience, and you forget that 65-year-olds have had the iPhone for 15 years now, 17 years? I mean,
15, yeah.
Yeah,
This
15,
summer,
right,
15.
15. So we're seeing rapid change, especially in the last couple years. It feels like COVID just accelerated that. What have you seen changed, and what hasn't? Lindsey, you want to take that first?
Sure. I would think I would start with the people themselves, right? So first and foremost, we've seen people's behaviors changing. We have now a very large intergenerational consumer base. So you have consumers that are Gen Z all the way to baby boomers. We're seeing baby boomers live longer, and they're retiring, having to care for their elders now. So the needs of people, that spectrum has grown significantly. And so when I think about what's changing, it's that evolution. Change is happening fast, but we're going to have to react gradually. When we talk about the consumer base, let's talk about the people first, the people who are purchasing products. Their expectations are different. If you're a millennial, you're expecting an integrated experience that's personalized to you. If you're a baby boomer, maybe you interact with technology to help you where necessary, but you still like the paper process, or you may want to interact with a person. If I give you more than one choice on a product, you may need to contact somebody to get more clarity. So the expectations are changing, but I think it's going to be a gradual evolution, and as carriers, we're going to have to support many different variants. Same with advisors. I think advisors' behaviors, depending on how long they've been in the field force, some of them still like the paper process. Some of them still want to carry all the marketing materials in their briefcase and meet a client face-to-face. COVID, as you mentioned, certainly accelerated that and forced this digital experience and digital signatures, et cetera. But you're starting to see those people who had those old behaviors bring them back post-COVID. And then on the other side, you have people who their identity is digital. And they view technology as an extension of themselves, and we have to bring them into an experience. And as Rick mentioned, do business on their terms. So they're expecting a digital experience. They're expecting an ability to maybe not talk to a human and go end-to-end in a process. So things are changing, I think, but certainly it's going to be a gradual evolution.
So we have the poll up here. You see policyholder there, plan sponsor, but obviously agent and beneficiary is one that jumps out to me. Thinking about them and where they belong in the process. So you hit on all that, and they all have a different kind of expectation. And
let me push back on it a little bit.
Okay.
I don't think they do have a different expectation. And here's why. Because while it's easy for us to define these groups by their roles or by their relationships to our companies, every one of these people are all human beings. And their expectations have been shaped not necessarily just by the interactions they have with your company, or even the interactions that they have as part of their job with their company, but part of the experience that they've had with every company that they've ever dealt with. And this is what we've come to describe as the A to Z phenomenon. So each of us individually, our expectations about the way we communicate, the way we interact, what we're hoping for and what we're expecting from the companies we do business with, come from the experiences of every company we've individually as people ever done business with, from A to Z, from Amazon to Zappos. So if you're not creating an experience that gives your customers the freedom and flexibility to be able to communicate digitally when they want to, or in a human way when they need to, then you're falling behind. So yes, to you as a company, each one of these stakeholder groups serves a different function to you, and you interact with them differently. They're still all human beings, and all of us and our expectations have been shaped by the ready availability of our connection to the world, which we're all now so used to it that it's almost like we don't even talk about it like technology anymore. It's just how we live.
Yeah, I actually don't think we disagree. I think expectations is the wrong word. You're exactly right, and we've seen that. I think they have different needs, maybe would have been a better word for me. But yeah, I mean, especially as we see, for a lot of our carriers that have independent agents or independent financial representatives that can choose to go anywhere, they are now demanding it be easy for them to go through. And they might only sell one or two of those policies a year, so they need an experience that a direct-to-consumer can fill out, or are they going to put that in front of one of their customers? And so I agree with you. Their expectations have, the Ubers, the Amazons, the A to Z. That's wonderful. You have to come up with maybe Zebra for the Z, some of the insurance ones, but I don't disagree.
I was just going to say, I don't think we answered the second portion of your question, which was what hasn't changed.
What hasn't changed, yes.
And the thing that comes to mind first for me is trust. Customers and humans are expecting to trust you with their experience, with their business. And I don't think that has changed even with technology advancing and the world around us advancing. They're looking for you to provide them that trust, and how do they gain that trust? Second is financial literacy. It has always, in this industry, it's always been a challenge, and I think it will, my vantage point is that it will actually get worse. And we're going to need to find ways to provide financial literacy to the Gen Zs and millennials that are up and coming purchasers of insurance by new means, as you mentioned. Kids are learning things on YouTube now versus going to your company website. So how do you provide that financial literacy to them so that they're making wise choices when they're doing business with us?
Yeah, no, we see that we have an engagement solution that connects those, and financial literacy is one of the top things. When they're in the buying process, they want to make sure, am I making the right decision? It's a very complex thing, but our industry at its core is to protect people. I mean, nothing gets me more than to see a GoFundMe. One of the number one things in GoFundMe is, to pay for death expenses. And to see that and see where we could solve that to where that doesn't need to be there. Our mission hasn't changed, and why people interact with us hasn't changed. But it is hard to think about. It's a complex product. Insurance products aren't bought, they're sold, that kind of conversation. I think that can be true, but I think education, kind of changes that a little bit. How is it sold, right? You don't have to have a hard sell to help somebody down the path to protect themselves. So I think we agree. So let's move a little bit more to the company side or some of the carriers that you've worked with, Rick. What have you seen the carriers or companies do well? And what mistakes have you seen, or maybe even if you want to share some of the mistakes y'all have made, or you've seen your other colleagues make as they're working or as they're focusing on digitalization and keeping humans in the mix? Rick, you want to go first?
Sure. So a couple of things that we've seen smart companies doing. Number one is being able to anticipate when human contact is most helpful and to offer it at exactly that moment. So through the history of other customers or clients who have gone through similar processes, trying to understand exactly where within this process could we introduce the idea of speaking to a live human being that would be the most helpful to that person at that exact moment. So again, keeping human in the mix doesn't mean forcing somebody to have live human contact or insisting you must speak to a person to complete this part of a process, but to make it available at the most likely time when it's going to be the most helpful. And then the other thing is to make sure that that human contact comes as a value add instead of as a necessary. Instead of, to complete this part of the process, you're gonna have to talk to this person. But rather to make a suggestion that's based more on what we define as social proof, which is sharing the experiences of others with the person that you're interacting with. And the way that might play out is, based on the situation you're in, Bryan, 87% of people have thought it was really helpful to talk to an agent at this point about this issue. Would you like to do that now?
We call it people like you.
Exactly.
Great, strong statement.
Yes. Turns out there's a whole psychological principle called social proof. And the master lesson there is stop telling customers what to do or even recommending what they should do, but rather pass along the recommendations of other people like them at the exact moment that would be the most helpful. I'll give you an analogy. It's the server mistake. And by server, I mean a restaurant server. How many times do you go to a restaurant and you say, "What's good here?" The server will almost always say, "Well, I'll tell you what, I really love the meatloaf. The meatloaf is my favorite." So let's think about that for just a second. Well, what do I care what you like? I don't know you. I have no idea what your taste is. When what you could have said was, "You know what? I don't know if you like meatloaf, but virtually everybody who's ever had the meatloaf here says it's the best meatloaf they've ever had." So instead of telling me what you want or what you like, tell me what other people like me have found to be helpful. It's still ultimately the same suggestion, but it's perceived very differently and it creates a very different kind of experience.
I spent some time in the restaurant industry. We just went with the most expensive thing.
Right. Almost everybody here has found that the $10,000 bottle of
The
Cliquot
bottle, yeah, it's wonderful.
is the best, yeah.
Let's break this into two. So that's what we've seen do well. I'd love to hear from you as well, and then we'll circle back with the negative side of the mistakes. So.
Sure. I think first and foremost, it's making it a priority. I think, I'll talk about our history coming from legacy technology, a large footprint of technology, lots of acquisitions, lots of systems supporting the same function. That transition can be difficult if you don't put focus on it. So I think first and foremost, companies who do this successfully put a priority on making sure that the customer experience is important, and regardless of which customer we're referring to. And then I think doing it well also means you have to do it through the spectrum, which will lead me to my not doing it well. But making sure that experience is consistent and what you're offering that as an experience is consistent from the point of sale to what their in-force experience is like. It's very often easy to get tripped up with, I need to acquire you as a customer, so I will provide you with the best experience at the onset. Using your example of a restaurant, it's up front, it's a great experience, and then as soon as your food is delivered, you never see the server again. Yep. So you lose that contact, and most of our memorable experience, whether it's with Amazon or a great restaurant experience, that it's from the beginning to the end, from the moment you walked into the door until you left, from the moment I went on your website to my purchase experience and when that item showed up at my front door, and even the follow-up thereafter. People who do this well do it well from end to end.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, the number of times we walk in and there's budgets to acquire more customers always, right? How do we sell more, right? That's one of the first questions we get. And we're seeing more budgets on the servicing side because people are finally throwing their hands up and saying, I don't want to find a fax machine to interact with you, right? But I agree. Where do you see, so other executives that are still on the journey of prioritizing the whole piece? What are some of the things that have worked, or what some suggestions you may have for them to help their organization prioritize that whole piece and really focus on that human first?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, there are table stakes out there at this point, and if you are below the table stakes, it's making the table stakes a priority as your baseline, and then determining where in your journey have you already innovated and provided experience, and where do you need to improve. But it's important to also understand who your customer is, and I would argue who your best customers are. Learn from them, identify their needs and experiences and improve in those spaces first. Prioritization is an interesting question because it always is tied to financials and where do you want to invest your money. As you mentioned, investing in sales experience first is where most companies go. But then you need to be concerned about retention, depending on what your business model is, maybe opportunities for cross-selling, and as we've all experienced, you have one bad experience that can ruin the experience for many customers, and maybe appropriate for some storytelling here. But I think any of us could talk about an experience that we've had that left a bad taste in our mouth, and you will never return to that company. So making sure you're prioritizing for the right moment, meeting the customers where they need to be met, and make that an ongoing strategy and a part of your business to evolve it end to end.
The biggest mistake that we see companies make is believing that they are customer-centric, terms like customer first or delighting the customer, when in fact, most companies are deceiving themselves that they're customer first or that they're customer-centric. And here's a litmus test. If your company spends a lot of time thinking about your customers, you're actually very company-centric. Because if you really want to be customer-centric, don't spend a lot of time thinking about your customers. Spend a lot of time thinking like your customers. And here's the thing. Your customers don't care about any of the things you care about. They don't care about your goals, your objectives, your sales quotas, your customer acquisition goals. Raise your hand if you as an individual like being acquired. You know, I mean, that's not a thing any of us can relate to as people, and yet that's all the conversation that happens in the office or in our Zoom meetings. So if you can really divorce yourself from what's important to you as a company and start to think about what's important to your customers and how they process those things, then you might be on the right path. Here's an example. As I mentioned, I've done a lot of study into customer loyalty. And almost every company tries to create an experience that will have customers saying afterward, wow, that company's great, or I was really delighted by what you did. That, as it turns out, is the incorrect path to customer loyalty. Because loyalty really doesn't come from what a customer thinks about you and your company and your products and your brands. Loyalty really comes from how people feel about themselves as a result of their choice to become your customer. So instead of trying to create experiences that have people saying, wow, you guys are awesome, and I can't wait to recommend you, what you should be doing is creating an experience that will have a person thinking, man, I had a lot of different choices I could have made, but I am so smart for making the choice to work with this company. And if I choose to recommend you, it's not really a recommendation of your company, it's ultimately an endorsement of the wisdom of my choice to become your customer. That's where loyalty really comes from. So stop thinking that it's about you.
Yeah, that's so the biggest mistake is thinking that they're further ahead in the process or they have it figured out.
Right.
Yeah,
Think about all the data we have. Oh my God, do we know our customers? We can microanalyze every detail of their entire journey, and we know exactly which customers are buying which products and how long they've been customers and which customers are more likely to buy more products. Man, we have more data and analysis about our customers than we ever have before, so we really know our customers. No, you don't. You know what you're doing. But until you're ready to take your brain out of your head and put a customer's brain in to forget about all the stuff that's important to you, you're only going further down the pathway of company centricity.
That's good. I want to get the mistakes. Go ahead and throw up the next poll so we'll start getting some in. It's a one-word phrase to describe your company's philosophy on what defines customer centricity for your business. So, what is customer centricity? But I do want to kind of swing back to you if you have any mistakes you've seen other companies make or us in the industry make when trying to keep human in the mix, if you will.
Yeah, I think I alluded to a portion of it. The first fatal flaw is introducing an experience and a portion of the overall experience that may be enticing to the customer because it is positive, but then you have a poor experience on the back end, maybe. A digital experience at point of sale, and then your call center is failing. A digital experience on the front end, and then you don't have a mechanism to take payment online after the sale. Again, it goes to meeting customer where they want to do business and on their terms. For us, I think for Brighthouse, it was being in the right time at the right place. We had just launched a digital experience end-to-end for our life insurance with digital underwriting 4 months before COVID hit, with digital delivery and all the components with it. So we were in the right place at the right time for that experience and to meet people where they needed to be met. But that doesn't cover, that's not all inclusive and doesn't cover every user base. Like there's still people who wanted to buy insurance by paper and you couldn't do it during COVID. But I think, people who are doing it well have to look at it encompassing, and they also have to look at their internal processes. If your processes internally are not smooth from end to end, then you run into other challenges with customer experience. So it's, that I think is first and foremost, to your point, pretending like you're customer centric and focusing on one thing. I remember a former company focused solely on correspondence delivery and the documents that we were delivering to customers and calling themselves customer centric. And really what we did was rationalize all the correspondence and make it the same across all lines of business for every consumer. It was not personalized in any way. And so I think it's failing to understand the breadth really of customer centricity and what it means to be user-centric company. So.
I agree. As these start to roll in, I think there's some good ones. I like easy, but what does that mean? I mean, again, it's different for so many people. Their experience. Like, I don't want, the first time I bought insurance, it took 6 months. Because we'll get into it, but it took me a long time to get through the process. The first real big policy I bought. The last one I bought was on a plane, and it took me 6 minutes. Almost the exact same policy. Didn't have anybody come to my house. Those kind of experiences. So for me, easy does matter. Quick, convenient. Other people, it's really making sure that they're making the right decisions. So
think about, just for a second, for anybody who uses TurboTax. Do either of you guys use TurboTax? TurboTax has evolved over the years. I've been using it for probably 12 or 15 years now. But it's evolved to become entirely customer-centric, because instead of feeling like you're doing your tax return, it's like you're being interviewed. It's simply asking you questions about the most important person in the world, yourself. And so a process that makes me feel like I'm the subject instead of the object of some transaction or some acquisition process feels very different. Everything should be about me, the person, rather than about you, the company. And use that as a test. Go through the processes that your customers or prospective customers are going through and see, how much of this is really about them? How much of this helps them understand themselves better and feel differently and better about themselves?
Yeah, no.
I like easy as well. Maybe a different term is simple. I think, to your point about going through the life insurance experience, underwriting may be the most invasive experience for a human to go through. Sending a medical assistant to your house to take your labs, that evolution is changing, that experience is changing significantly. And then we talk about financial literacy. Insurance companies, when they think about themselves, tend to ask questions of the client from their point of view that can be very confusing to the customer.
Absolutely.
So making sure that when you're asking questions for underwriting, even in a digital world, if you're doing digital underwriting, make sure you ask the questions in a way that is consumable by the human and not by what the insurance company understands or what your compliance and regulatory department is saying is the appropriate language to put out there. Because it confuses people and then sends them back. Either they abandon the process or it sends them back to an advisor or a human that can actually answer the questions for them.
Our previous book was called The Effortless Experience. And some people have criticized us by saying, that's bunk because nothing's effortless. Getting out of bed in the morning requires effort, so nothing's effortless, so your title's a lie. Well, the reality is, an effortless experience is more effortless than that person expected it would be. So, going to buy a donut at Dunkin' Donuts, you should just walk up to the window and say, I want the pink one, and a pink one's put in your bag. So that's how much effort you expect. If you're applying for a new insurance policy, or if you're making a claim, there's an assumption that there's going to be a degree of effort. But now the question becomes, after that whole interaction is over, does the customer think that it was more or less effort than they expected? And it turns out there's so many things that companies can do to take control over a customer's perception of effort. And one of the simplest ones is to say at the outset of a process, yes, there are a couple of steps that we're going to have to work out together, and there's a couple things that you're going to need to do, but we've helped thousands of other people through the same exact process that you're going through now, and we've discovered the fastest and easiest way to help you get exactly what you want. And if you just say that at the beginning of an interaction, after it's over, even if you end up doing the same exact things you would have done without saying that in advance, the customer will invariably come out of that feeling, wow, that was easier than I thought it would be.
That's great. I want to circle back to that topic we touched a little bit. An exercise, we were a startup and we had to watch our dollars, right? And we obviously still do. But we often would do the exercise. You have $10 to spend. These are the 5 things you want to do. Assign them $1, right? How do you, or how should companies, what are your suggestions on where in the value chain or what they should focus on? How should they prioritize their investments into digital experience, customer centricity? Lindsey?
Data is everywhere. Arguably, all of our companies, regardless of what industry you're in, are going to become data analytics companies. And for us, I think it's looking at activity, looking at behaviors, gathering the data of those individuals, and determining where your dollar is best spent. There's data on complaints. There's data out there on social media is everywhere, company reviews, experiences. There's surveys on the call center. There's so much information that we have at our disposal to make those decisions that are data-driven decisions versus what we feel personally is the right move to make. You can look at, one classic example that we have is beneficiary changes. The volume of beneficiary changes that we still receive by paper is astronomical. Why is that? But on the flip side of that, the processors do that right 99% of the time. So is that the one that we need to focus on? And customers are likely not complaining about that one per se. Maybe it's a withdrawal that we see a high volume of them, but they're very costly from an experience perspective for us because the processors make mistakes on those most often. So trying to use data to intelligently decide where you put your next dollar.
If you had $10 to spend, I'd say spend $8.75 of it on making it easier for your customer-facing employees to make things easier for your customers. So in the research that we did about the effortless customer experience, one of the things we realized so many companies have overlooked is making things easier for their customer-facing employees. So anything you could do that helps them feel more empowered, that enables them to take greater control over customer issues, that allows them to truly connect with customers in a human way, invariably translates to a way better customer experience, much higher customer loyalty, and ultimately profitability for the company. So take a very good hard look at whether or not you're making your customer-facing employees' jobs easier or harder, and find a way to make it easier, because that will always translate to greater success.
I like it. $8.75, that's a big investment. I like the number. Just don't call your product Acquire. We call our product Lifetime Acquire, which is kind of funny. I'll add a little bit to what we've seen, both mistakes and successes on where people make investments. You're right, there's an amazing amount of data, and it's just compounding each year. Sometimes we see that keep carriers from making decisions or keep people from making decisions based on that because there's too much. We also, the ones that we just see the most rapid success and improvements are the ones that take a hypothesis and act on it, because the data you get from day one of going live, waiting and seeing and interacting, whether it be with an agent, whether it be with a policyholder, once they start touching the system, you learn more in that day than 10 months, 12 months, 4 years of planning to go live. And so we really encourage that. And then taking that approach of what are we going to learn and then how are we going to go right and left? Instead of trying to build the car all on the skateboard methodology, building it slowly and building the right car. And so that's one where we see the biggest. So let's throw up the next poll here. So obviously we're seeing a big change. Let's look forward. Where do you see us going in the next 5 to 10 years? We look back 15 years, the iPhone. I'm not sure, maybe one of you know what the next big iPhone moment's gonna be for us. Maybe we won't have apps or anything anymore. Where do you see us going? What do you think really is gonna happen in the next 5 to 10 years in our industry?
I think we're going to very soon look back at the idea that companies ever asked or made their customers call them on the telephone as being something that's just hopelessly archaic. Think of all the services that we used to use by dialing a phone number information and service-oriented features, like, for example, if you're old enough, do you remember when you used to call a telephone number for time and temperature or for a weather report? Who remembers movie phone, calling a phone number to find out what times movies were playing at your local theater, or stock quotes or sports scores? All these things, even information. When's the last time you called 411 for information? We don't use the phone anymore for service or for information, and yet, still to this day, US companies alone are taking over 1 billion customer service phone calls. It makes no sense. But again, live human contact is still critical in moments of truth, but that doesn't mean it has to be on the phone. So I think we're just a few years away from thinking, I can't believe our company used to make customers call on the phone. That now seems pathetic.
And Lindsey?
I think, well, one is hyper-personalization. With the data that we have, I think people are going to expect that. As I mentioned earlier on, and the demographic that we're facing and how the generational gaps are changing, people who are going to be our customers very soon are going to expect a very personalized experience because they're used to technology being an extension of their identity. To your point, I think they're still going to have call center calls for the people who haven't changed their behaviors or won't change their behaviors. But we're going to need to make it a more personal experience for others who need that. I would also say that I think in our industry, what hasn't changed that needs to change is compliance and regulatory departments. Regulation is heavily weighed on the insurance space and makes some of the digital experiences challenging. I think we'll start to see that evolution happening pretty quickly here in the next 5 years, and that mindset shift as well. We do have to remember that our employee base also has generational gaps and old mindsets that will change. Obviously, technology will continue to evolve around us, and we're going to have to adapt to that. I see the metaverse coming up. There's a metaverse conversation earlier today as well. I think that's forthcoming, and it's probably going to be table stakes for maybe not the millennial generation, Generation Z, and Alpha, I think, is our next yet to be born generation. And those people are going to want this virtual reality experience, and but maybe further out, maybe 10 years for that.
It's interesting. It's interesting getting fintech and insurtech together. Insurtech used to be this, subcategory of fintech. Maybe it still is. I think it's come out to its own, and it's big enough to be taught. I see the insurtech space, the insurance space, where the banking space was 5 to 10 years ago. So I think, it's nice. You have a company that has some of the same regulatory issues, some of the same problems or challenges in the banking space, the fintech space, that we have in the insurtech space. So we have someone's blazed the trail, and we can kind of look at that, and it'll help us move forward faster. But I think a lot of the next 5 to 10 years we'll be playing catch up a little bit still. I hope that we see us move, and I like the idea of new data sources and how we interact. DNA's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, dental records is one of the real-time, kind of insights, one of the ones that I'm interested in. But let's switch over. I got a couple questions here that come in. One kind of catches, why do you think some agents are hesitant when carriers want to talk directly to the policyholder? And so I've heard this before, that's my customer, or my customer is the agent. I don't need to talk to policyholder. That's changing. Most carriers aren't saying that anymore. But why do you think that is? And maybe better response is, how do you help? We talk about, it's not about replacing the agent, it's about helping them do their job better. I'd love to get your thinking on that, Lindsey, first.
Well, it's interesting. From a carrier perspective, at least it doesn't have our own agent force. In the sales experience, we actually don't want to interact with the customer for fiduciary reasons, at least giving them financial advice. Certainly can interact with the customer on the sale and education of what they're purchasing. We can but we refrain from giving financial advice. I might suggest that depending on who the agent is and what the distribution channel is, we certainly interact heavily with our internal wholesalers and our external wholesalers through providing them marketing materials, educational materials, tools that allow them to make the sale easier. And I think that goes as far as interacting with the customer themselves. We also spend a lot of time with customer insights and using our actual consumers to act on panels for us and interact with some of our experience to give real feedback before it goes to market. Those are important inputs. I would say that we do interact with, we will have opportunities to interact with customers in the in-force space. Obviously our call center and online servicing experiences interact directly with the customers. I'm not sure I have a good answer per se on why an agent wouldn't want us interacting with a customer.
Yeah. I think I sometimes see people, I'm not sure about the question, but I sometimes see where they get scared of like direct-to-consumer buying experiences, like, oh, that's going to replace us. I think the really forward-thinking agents know that their place is very important and going nowhere, and that they can embrace that, because there are people that aren't going to buy if you make me talk to somebody, and so are you willing to give up all that business, or maybe that's what they start the process thinking, that they don't want to talk to somebody, and then they do, but you've missed them because they've gone somewhere else that lets them start. And so I think that, I'm a sales guy at heart. I get nervous when people come to my territory, and I think that might drive it. Rick, any thoughts on how to get agents involved to see this as a positive, or why they may be hesitant? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's the handoff or the disconnect, which is very disconcerting to customers. One word customers hate is the word them. In other words, you're going to have to talk to them. I'm sorry, I thought I was talking to them. I don't think customers see the difference between the agent and the carrier. They're all the same entity to the customer. So if there seems to be an awkward handoff or a confusion, or you're going to have to talk to them, or suddenly somebody's contacting you who you don't know and they're representing the entity of this company that I thought I was doing business with, that's where it starts to break down. So ensure at all times that the customer always feels like they're already talking to the right people.
Fascinating. Here's another question. How do you foresee the change in group interactions as part of the digital experience? Thoughts on group insurance and how that might be changing, and from an interaction
I'm going
standpoint?
to pass this one on to Lindsey.
We don't play heavily in the group space, but I still think that it's the same. How do you make it easier for employers to sell insurance to employees? What are the employees' needs? We've talked about financial literacy a lot. Do they know what they're buying and what decisions they're making? When they go through open enrollment, do they know what choices they have, and are they making the right choices? I still think there's an opportunity there for human interaction. Many of us are used to going through the process of selecting benefits, and it's, many times it's just you're getting a comparison of two options and you're just picking hoping you pick the best one. And there really isn't any human interaction in that process. And many times the company you're actually getting the benefit from is not known to you until after the fact. So I think that will still evolve a little bit. And I presume as technology advancements happen inside of companies, the groups will follow.
Yeah, we do a little bit of it, so I'll hit. We definitely, the number of people, if you ask, first of all, it's one of the biggest places of coverage that people have in the life space is through their employer. But if you ask them who their insurance provider is, they couldn't even tell you the first letter of the name of the company, most likely. Education is a big opportunity in the workforce. I think it's a great place where you can interact with people. But I think also is the education about, hey, did you know you can take that product with you? Or that there's products that are maybe better priced or better fit for you as you change. And so I think what you'll start to see is instead of that carrier only having the one relationship with the employer, starting to have actual relationships with all the employees to better serve them, to better get at our mission.
And here's another opportunity for social proof. Think about it from your own standpoint. Companies you've joined, you go through that whole process, you get a million other onboarding things going on, you get to make a million decisions when it comes to your plans and your coverage. It almost always feels like you're being sold something that you don't entirely understand, but you got to make certain decisions. But if those recommendations are coming either from your company or from the carrier, they're typically not very trustworthy. But if they were coming from other employees like you, you'd probably understand what your options were better and feel more confident in your choices. So rather than the company saying, here's all your options, what companies ought to be saying is, here are fellow employees of yours who've made these different choices and why they made those choices and how they found those choices to be beneficial. Not as a spokesperson or as a paid shill, but simply as someone who's already gone through the process that you're now going through, but they did it years ago and here's what they learned. So using that opportunity to share the experiences of other people like me makes each of us feel that much more confident that we're gonna make the right choice.
I would also just add that it's usually the first experience for many people in buying insurance is going through their employer.
Absolutely. Here's another question. With financial literacy, are more people moving away from their agent or banker as their source of knowledge? If so, does lack of trust play a factor? I mean, you kind of hit on it. But.
Sure. I mean, we're all moving away from all official sources as the focus of truth. The democracy of information means now everyone theoretically has access to everything. And we've gotten to the point, whether for right or for wrong, that we're more likely to believe something that comes from some other person than anything that comes from some company or institution. So yeah, I mean, to your point, somebody mentioned YouTube earlier. It's like, don't put an instruction sheet in something you send me. Send me a link to a video so I can watch, not even your company assemble this product or do this thing, but show me somebody else doing it. We each want to see people like ourselves making choices, engaging in activities, following processes, and learning from them rather than from some entity.
Lindsey, any thoughts or lack? I mean, for me, I don't know. I look at something and I'm like, I don't know if I trust that. I have to dive deeper. That's my personality. Where my wife is more of, she's going to think the best of most people to start until otherwise. I mean, so as people, because I also I think the most people used to go ask their parents or their advisor or their parents' advisor when they were first looking at our products or their banker. And that's changing for the newer generation. So how do we solve the trust thing? Can we? Is it
I mean, it's interesting. I watch my children interact with, knowledge is at their disposal right now, right? They don't need an educational facility to teach them. My daughter is a huge baker, and everything she's learned is on the Instagram or a 5-minute YouTube video, and it's not required anymore. And you watch my children are 10 and 12, and you look at them, and they trust every source that they see, right? There's no need, they don't have that moment of second guessing yet. For us, we've gone through an evolution that makes us a caution.
The burn and learn school.
Yeah.
Well done.
We're very cautious of what we're seeing and what we're trusting, and we've been taught to check the source, and they just haven't yet. And I don't know that they will, honestly. So I think they're going to trust but verify. I think what's going to happen is until they have a poor experience, there's no reason for them not to trust it. So that'll evolve over time, I think. But for those of us who have many 8 years behind us, I think we will verify first and then trust.
Well, we're about out of time. Any closing remarks either you have or words of advice?
I think it's where we started. Keep the human in the mix and make sure you're focused on, as you mentioned, the person on the other side and how they're feeling and how, instead of what the company wants of them.
Rick, I'll give you the last word.
Our book traces the evolution of customer expectations and behavior and provides all kinds of insights about how you can, as an organization, evolve as quickly as your customers already have. And it's not a pitch for the book, but if you'd like a copy of the book, we'd be happy to send you one. Let's just talk afterward. Provide us with your mailing address, and one will be sent directly to you with our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if we didn't get to everybody's questions, feel free to come talk to us afterwards, or send us an email. So, thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.